Welcome to another episode of Reading and Writing in a DeLorean. This episode, a little bit different. I'm inside the car with the doors closed, just because there's some crowding going on outside the car in my garage and in my driveway. But I did want to update. I finished reading a book, and anytime I finish reading anything, I'm going to do a quick review. So I did finish reading, for those of you who know me really well, or even semi-well, one of my all-time favorite bands, I would put them in my top 5 ever, is a band called Faith No More. Been around since the early 80s. They technically still are together, even though they haven't done anything since 2015. But there's a book that came out called Small Victories, and I think it's backwards here, but that's okay. Maybe if I do this. Oh, there we go. See, it worked. Small Victories. It is the true story of Faith No More by Adrian, and it is definitely the most in-depth book of the band's career. I've been a fan of the band Die Hard since 1992 with their album Angel Dust. And I thought I knew everything about the band, but my God. So my review of this book is going to be more about how much deep dived information is in it, and not necessarily like his writing style or anything like that. If you didn't know, Courtney Love, yes, that Courtney Love, was in Faith No More as a singer before their first recorded singer, Chuck Mosley. And there's stories about how that happened. There's stories about their original guitarist, Mark Bowen, who had a song named after him on the first album. But they go even further back to people that I didn't even heard these people's names before in my life, that were part of Faith No More's history. And what's interesting is, Billy Gould, who is the bass player of Faith No More, on the back of the book, it's a quote from him. And I knew this book was going to be good when I read this quote. It said, "When I first heard about this Faith No More biography, I didn't know what to think. But I have to give credit where credit is due. It's a quality piece. The man has done his research, and it shows. It provided me with more than a few revelations, and I'm in the band." And I would have to say that that's the charm of Small Victories, is how much he goes into talking about how certain situations happened and how one band member felt about it in an interview, and then how another band member felt about it in a different interview. And it almost sounded like the two band members didn't even know how each other were feeling during that time. And you get this like bigger picture of what was going on through the making of each album and each tour, decisions that were made behind the scenes. Because, I mean, let's face it, Faith No More were the most active from 1984 to 1997. So that was before social media and, how bands had message boards and websites and stuff like that. I mean, it was starting, but we really didn't have, we couldn't get information about bands unless we read magazines or MTV News. So, we'd buy Spin or, the Metal Hammer or all the different magazines. And the magazines could only print what the band was telling them, for the interviews. So if the band didn't say something, then it was never printed. So us fans, we never really knew what was going on behind the scenes in these camps in the band. But with the onset of the internet and social media, information just flies so fast now. And then you get all these behind the scenes stuff, and it's basically all wrapped up in this book. So it's the stories about these wild parties that they crashed and played at, and their reluctance to follow the rules at certain shows that had strict rules, or stuff that was never talked about, until they were interviewed for this book. So if anything, the wealth of detail and stories, if you are a fan of Faith No More, I give this absolutely 10 stars. If you only kind of know them, or you like metal music and you want to read about a band that was super influential in the scene, and even though you don't know too much about them, you will come away at the end of this book a fan and will want to deep dive into their discography. It's written with a lot of enthusiasm, and I got the chance to, well, I talked to Bill Gould on the phone back in 2001, I think. He called me, he got my cell phone number somehow, and, when Bill Gould calls your cell phone, one morning at it was like 4 a.m, he was in Spain or something like that. Faith No More had been, heroes to me for years up to that point. And that was an amazing moment in my life that Bill was calling me. He was calling me because I was involved in a Faith No More tribute compilation that was coming out through Invisible Records, Martin Atkins, who I was partnering up business-wise. And Bill called me to kind of talk about the tribute, give me some advice, give me some opinions. And ever since then, Bill Gould and I wouldn't say we're friends or anything like that, but we definitely have kept in touch periodically through the years. And when they toured, they played Madison Square Garden in New York City in 2015, and Bill left backstage passes for me at the door. And it was my first time being able to go backstage at a Faith No More show and hang out with the whole band. Hung out with Puffy and Roddy was a trip. And then I met Mike Patton, and there's been so many stories through the years of people meeting Mike Patton. Maybe he's having a bad day, maybe he's a little grumpy that day, and so there's all these stories online about Mike being an asshole. I met Mike Patton, and he ruined my image of him, and what a dick. I'll tell you right now, the interaction I had with Mike, maybe he was in a good mood. Maybe this is how he really is, but he was super hospitable, took as many pictures as he wanted, chatted with me, never made me feel like I was bothering him or wasting his time. I knew when to cut the conversation and bow out. I didn't totally fanboy over him, but that night goes down in my head as one of the top 3 hands down best nights of my life, like meeting celebrities, because even John Hudson, the guitarist, is married to a Japanese woman, and I lived in Japan for 4 years, and so we're talking about Japan together. We're just sitting at a table chit-chatting about the culture, and they were so just awesome. It was so awesome to be there. And then Bill Gould, the bass player, Faith No More, he started a line of brandy, of alcohol, and there's a shop in DC that was selling it. And, he knows I have a DeLorean, and I made a joke to him on Facebook through Messenger, because that's how me and Bill talk. I said, hey, I'm going to go buy some bottles of wine, of your brandy, and put it on the hood of the DeLorean and take some photos. And he's like, if you do, please send them to me. So I was like, well, when Bill Gould makes a joke about you doing something, you do it, right? This is, bass player of one of your top 5 favorite bands of all time. So I did. I drove into DC. They had 2 bottles. Actually, I got there. They were sold out. And I had to wait for the delivery truck to deliver them. And they only got 2 bottles, so I bought both of them, brought them home, set them on the hood of the DeLorean, kneeled down, took a photo, sent them to Bill. He made a joke about, hey, can I use these in advertisements? I'm like, of course you can. I'm going to say no to you. Jesus Christ. But anyway, a little off tangent, but, but Small Victories by Adrian Hart. It's available in all bookstores. It's fantastic. So deep dive into the band's career and the stories. You'll look at them in a different way. Both a little bit more positive and both a little bit more negative, I think, too. There's some stories in there you're like, holy shit, I can't believe they did those things. But, and if you don't know Faith No More and you've made it all the way through this video just because I'm super handsome and I'm sitting in a DeLorean, my favorite album by them is Angel Dust. So I would advise you to start there if you don't know them and you want to get into them. But their most famous popular album is The Real Thing. So if you're looking for more of a mainstream metal, what everybody knows, then start with The Real Thing. But they do have 7 albums, and the discography is amazing all the way through. And that is it. And next video, I may or may not have a announcement about my own writing. Don't know yet, but sorry the flux capacitor is not on. When I turn it on, it blinks really bright, and then all you would see is like, and it's really distracting for all involved. Okay, so have a good week, and we'll chat to you later.